All right, welcome back to part 2 of the RTS master track. We're going to hopefully explain deeper about this concept. So last video, I showed you a graphic. I'll move it in the screen here. And of showing your master track how you can set it up. And so that you can have remedy bind any chord progression or scale idea that you want. And you can bind like 100 or 120 different chord ideas onto your keys, like I have here as one theme example. And you can bind them to have one scale on one octave. Then you can have different chords that you can pull from as borrowed chords. And so you can be playing in the major scale, first degree, fifth degree, fourth degree, then maybe borrow a chord, and then maybe try some experimental sharps or flats or diminished. But you can have these all bound onto your main keyboard, big or small. If you have a small keyboard, you could just use your octave shift to move you through the different octaves of your bound progressions on your keyboard. And so hopefully people understand that. So your theme can be anything. It can be orchestral music, it can be, love themes, it can be dramatic music, So let's get out of that. Now let's take a look at that same theme, but what it looks like in your DAW in MIDI. So these are the same chords. Let me zoom in. They're mainly triads, except where I added the seventh variations here on the white keys. And that becomes your master track. And then your master track becomes your chord track in your DAW. And I've explained how I do that, in case you're interested. And then you can say that, well, from these master chords on this master track, and you set up your DAW and save it like this, so you always have this information. And I know all my different octaves by each one is color-coded on an arranger track. So you can set up your musical backbone or foundation very simply, and it can be anything you want, and it'll always be in your project, and you can name it, and then you can build from there. And what I do is usually I take those original triads and I make like 30 different variations, including separate notes for bass notes, for cello notes, for broken chords and augmented ideas. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom and I will select this and I'll say, well, let's import my entire chords folder, just the chords folder, and show you how many different variations that I'll do for one theme. And let's pick my chords folder. And of course, you could have a folder full of melody ideas, motion ideas, so all those ostinatos, all those patterns for movement, for your horns and your flutes and everything. Orchestral ideas, more orchestral and piano folder, but we're going to import the chords folder. And we hit OK. And now, look at all this information. So we have all these thousands of notes here. And that pertains exactly to what I have in my chords 1 remedy. And so that folder, this one here, is the same one I just imported into my DAW, but instead of showing you inside remedy, which I normally do by scrolling through and turning off and on ideas, that's where I have it here. But now it's in the DAW, and so you can see the actual notes. So let's just take the original chords, and we can see that, yeah, here are the original chords. Move that to the side. Now you'll see some additions here. These are all new. These aren't part of the original idea. I think all the way up to like there. These are just intros and different chords I use. I'm experimenting with intros, endings, and bridges. Because, if you can have any MIDI information on any measure, it doesn't have to be a chord, it can be a quite complex pattern of 16th notes or whatever. And if you can assign it to whatever key in your instrument on your MIDI keyboard, It could be an intro, an ending, or a bridge, or anything. So I'm experimenting with that currently. But for today, we're just talking about all these chord notes, our master. So that's our original notes here. Then you can just take the top note of these original chords. So it'd be just the top notes here. And then you can separate it and say, well, I've got the top note, the mid note, and again, same thing inside your remedy when you're playing. There's the top note. I just cleared everything else because you can stack MIDI information here. Top note, bottom note, mid note, and then it becomes the triad. If I take the middle note out, then it's a parallel fifth, so you get a different flavor. Or I could say, no, I want a more complex chord, a full chord voicing 1, full chord voicing 2, 3, guitar voicing, first inversion, drop 2. So parallel fifths again. And you can have your bass notes separated on C1, C2, and you can stack them or have every instrument has its own remedy. So it becomes very versatile. And I'm going to show you that because it's hard to understand with me just talking. So I'm going to show you that in more detail next. So there you see all the chord tracks possibilities just for this one theme. And then I load that entire folder into any remedy that I want to assign to any instrument that wants a chord or a chord variation or a chord riff or broken chords or whatnot. So let's do that. So I'm going to move this to the side. I'm going to take all these chord tracks. I'm going to delete them. Just wanted to show you that. Now let's say, okay, great. You got all that power. Let's see it in action. So let's do something that normally would be a little bit complex and people might not even try because it might be just too much hassle. But let's say, let's start with Sonokinetic. Let's go and to Indie. Let's turn it on. Let's just, it should be in harmony with my master theme because it's RTS. So I open it up, I turn on its interface, and there it is. And for its input up here should be Remedy Controller 1 because I want to control these phrases in my RTS system. And let me drag in Controller 1 for you. I got a bunch of stuff on my separate monitor here, and there it is. And so right now, if we look at the top, I can clear everything, and I can say, these are all my controller tracks for different VSDI instruments. And I can have different versions of them. So I have one for Sonokinetic, and it works for Indie or Noir, because certain Sonokinetic libraries, the newer ones can do certain chords, the older ones have less chord variations. But regardless of that, you can set up your RTS for every type of phrase library, from Sonokinetic to Action Strings and different libraries. So we got our Sonokinetic and we've got Indie, and since it's hooked up, I should be able to go to my keyboard and go to the D minor scale and it should be working. And it is, so it's playing in harmony with my chords. But I happen to have it set up. The way I like to do it is I like to have my RTS system control the chords, and I control which phrases play in real time or what harmonies play in real time. But you could have controller notes inside your remedy, not just the chords here. You see at the bottom are the 3 chords, the triad. These notes above it are the controller notes that tell what phrases to play when, or you can do it in real time. So let's do it in real time and have remedy will play the chords in the blue section, so I don't have to worry about tripping any of the key switches or messing things up, and it's all going to play within the blue zone because that's how I have it set up. You set it up once and forget it. So now I've got this musical idea on track 2 inside of Indie, which is this. I'll turn it up a bit. And so it's a musical strings playing some motion. And I could go to another track inside of Indie and I could turn it on, activate it with this button. And we could look at it and say I want it to play this bass. Or that. Or anything, right? And because these are done in real time, or I should say played in real time by real players, you want to pick something that'll work with another phrase that you have. Some work better than others, but that's a phrase thing, right? But let's say I want to have that bass, so I select that bass, it's turned on, and now my bass should be playing with this musical phrase inside of Indie, but it's being controlled by my RTS chord system, and it should all be in harmony. And it is. So now you can decide musically what you want to do. You're not worried about playing chords outside of this specific blue area or whatever. It's all programmed so it won't go out of the ranges, and each press you do, you know what's going to happen. So great. And I could do the same thing, just move my hand down on my actual physical keyboard here and play something in the C major. The tonic, or the first degree, to the fifth, to the fourth, right? You're just playing music. And then you might say, well, okay, in theory, you're saying that everything works with everything. Okay, how about if I want to turn off this bass? So I deactivate that bass, but I still have this musical movement in the strings, but I want to have the orchestra complete. I happen to like that bass. Okay, so maybe you like that bass. So you can go into the orchestra complete or easy bass or whatever you have. As long as it's hooked up, you could use the UJAM bass. Let's go to the orchestra bass, turn it on, so activate it with hotkeys. See the interface, move it over to this monitor, expand it. And okay, so now if this is hooked up, let's see, it's hooked up to Remedy bass. And sure enough, if I drag that in, it's hooked up to my RTS theme, and it should play a bass note. Let me turn it up a bit so you can hear it. And it is. This happens to be set to a staccato note. We may want to change it to like a more sustained note, and we can just do that in this interface. Now sustained bass. And in response to how hard I'm hitting the keys. But it's in harmony with what I'm playing, my theme. But then I might say, well, I like that idea kind of, but I'm hoping for more action in my bass to keep up with this faster, let's see where are we here? With this phrase inside of Indie, which is a fast phrase. So okay, since it's hooked up and I've got all my musical ideas, I can just say, let's go to that controller, my bass controller, and I can say, okay, I want it to play not the C note for the bass, I want the C2 note, or both, you could stack them, but I want it to play the C2 note, bass note, more for the cello, but I wanted to play 4-beat. Now, because it's turned back to a staccato articulation, it should be able to nicely play that. So, way too loud, but let's say, oh, those strings are pretty fast. What if I want a faster beat? No problem. Then I can just go here and say, well, it's times 2 tempo, 2 times tempo. Now we should have that. So you're getting the point here. You know, you can transpose it up or down. You can change, you know, what track. If you want more of the bass, you could just stack the bass notes, and now it'll be a little bit more upright bass in there. But that's up to you to do musically now, as you can control the mix perfectly. But Remedy is playing in the right blue zone for that. It's all preset up. So then you could say, well, all right, let's move these out of the way. And I got my bass, and I got my bass motion that's keeping up with my fast strings that happens to be a phrase from a phrase library. But what if I want to do something even, let's push this a little bit. What if I want fast strings from, normally I use something like VSL or whatever, which would be great and works really great. But in this case, let's go to Action Strings 2, which is another type of phrase library. So it's a different type of library, different architecture. Let's turn it on. Let it load up. Move it into frame here. I can move the bass away now. So now this, if it's hooked up to RTS, and it is, it's hooked up to controller 2 because I need, just like Sonokinetic, it's not a sample library, so it gets a controller track to control it. And let's look at controller 2 on the other screen. Bring it in. Sure enough, this is Remedy controller 2. So this is what Action Strings is being played by, this Remedy, and you can see the triad below and up above is a controller. See, it's set up to Action Strings. So immediately, without even doing anything, as soon as it loads up, it should play in harmony. Now, musically, it may not be to your taste, but it will be in harmony with everything else. And it is. So now I can go to C major, I can go from the root, 5th, to the 4th, and you're playing music and you're starting to, but these may not be the instruments you want. I'm just picking them random here to show you how different, completely different systems and types of VSTIs, not just sampled instruments, but they'll be in harmony. Now, you may want to move anything out of harmony. I could add a VSL string, solo string here, and I could say, maybe I want that solo string to play, so I would, let's turn it on, VSL solo strings. I'm just picking something out of the blue here. And it's set up to Remedy Motion 1. Okay, so I'll look at Motion 1. I have it on my other screen here. And it happens to be playing like a very simple ostinato or a broken chords with a bass note. Let's take it to a simple, there's runs, dyads, simple ostinatos, complex motions. I mean, you can put in here whatever you want. You could put in, say in your lifetime, how many times have you, like if you're a professional, you've probably created beautiful ostinatos by hand inside your DAW, and wish you could just have them in a library which you could play with you could test any string library with them instantly. That's perfect for this. So you could just have it programmed once, make a track of it, and just select it. But let's go with a walking 8-beat. So now this solo string library, let's just open its interface, which is, again, it's a sample library of VSL. Completely different company, completely different system, and now I've got it set. I'll pick the a staccato articulation. Now again, musically this might not be, I'm just picking things by random, but because it's set up the way it should be inside this whole system, it should make harmonic sense. Again, musically it might not be what you want, but so you're often running with musical ideas. Then I could say, well, because I have this set up to its own motion controller, and my point of adding this VSL string is to get to some of the power here, even more of the power, is I can say, no, I want to transpose down, so it'll be a lower string, as long as it's within the range of the instrument. So now this string is playing with action strings, which is playing with sonokinetic, which is playing with the orchestra complete. Now that's getting, you would want to take your time and tailor each instrument to really work with each other and adjust the reverb and all that. But I'm just showing you how fast you can work with very complex different systems, have it in harmony until you want to take it out of harmony, and that's where this comes in. Now I could say these eighth notes that this VSL strings is playing now I want to mess with harmony a little bit. I want to experiment maybe by adding some semitones up. Now let's just hear what we get. So now I'm playing in a D minor scale. You get more of a little dissonance. You get more of a dramatic, more of a little suspense, right? If I take it down back to where it was and play it in the C major scale. And remember, you can change any instrument, like action strings alone has, I don't know how many hundreds of different variations and different So, and then you can change any one of these libraries to 100 different versions. So you're messing with harmony. You're using any instrument you want. So you're gone from worrying about technical issues. Oh, should I try to even use a string from Sonokinetic? Is it going to mess everything up? No, it starts you off at a baseline of harmony that you can have controlled, and you don't have to worry about the technical aspects. And then you can start saying, okay, I like this idea, but let me work. I may want to make, because in something like Action Strings 2, you can go in and edit in its own interface. And also remember that it's just playing one phrase, but you can set up its controller to change those phrases as you play notes on your keyboard. So it's not just giving, in this case, Action Strings, a chordal note plus a bass note, but it's actually moving and telling it where you want to change and make changes automatically. And you can have that like it just did that note, it changed over to this variation. But it depends, how you want to set up that. You could have one controller. Let's go to its controller, if I can find it back here. But I think you get the idea. So you can have more than just chords in the right places for all these instruments. You set it up and you could have variations. I like to have in my controller tracks, Action Strings variation 1, variation 2. In my variation 1 controller track, which you can, pick, it may just give you triads with not changing the phrase. My second one has triad plus the bass note, plus it changes through these different phrases quite every measure. Or you can have it change through these phrases every quarter measure. I think you're getting the picture. Very versatile. You set it up once, so you're literally choosing your instrument, deciding if you want fast motion, slow motion, and you're at most you're just picking, what type of ostinatos you want, what type of rhythm for what instrument. It's all going to start off in perfect harmony until you want to take a certain instrument and bring in a little bit of discourse in there, a little bit of tension. But you can do it per instrument, per track. You can have just the top note of your chords that influence just a high note, which is a pedal note, on and on and on. That's why I like this system. That's why I'm trying to share it with people. You may have your own system. But so for this video where I talk about, again, if I just move this all out of the way and we go back to our master track. So all the tracks that you choose and variations that come from this master track of all this chord track up here can be vast. So you may just have a simple, in this case over here, like the C major scale on the white keys, some variations on the black keys, but you can see that you add so many variations that it becomes thousands and thousands of variations, from pedal notes to movement to parallel fifths versions, you really have an endless variety, even just in one theme. Then you could have a specialized piano theme, and on and on. So I hope I was able to explain this a little bit deeper this time. For anybody that happens to be interested, I did this for you. If you appreciate it, hit the thumbs up, support the channel, and we'll see you on the next video.